training help. I am going to talk about some training resources, and if we think about our old school training and the software that was used 10 and 20 years ago, there's been a lot of improvements, both in the software and the hardware and the technology of deliverables, but also what we know about the learning process. And so I'm going to talk about some of those improvements. We don't have to struggle with our old ways of training. I'm going to talk about e-learning, HTML versus PowerPoint e-learning, software simulations, screencast videos, and e-notebooks. And then the second half of the presentation, I'm going to talk about getting training bang for our buck. There's just-in-time training resources, and that is microlearning. There's instructor-led events, e-learning, and best practices. So we'll start off with e-learning. Now, a couple decades ago, e-learning was typically PowerPoint files or PDF files. And nowadays, the modern e-learning authoring software publishes an e-learning unit in HTML format. And there are some advantages to that, which I'm going to talk about now. The e-learning authoring software is slide-based, similar to PowerPoint, but with a lot of bells and whistles that PowerPoint just can't do. The published lesson is actually a zip folder with several subfolders and files. So essentially, the e-learning unit is a series of connected web pages within that frame. So what's the big advantage to HTML format? So if you think back to those old e-learning units, how many of us, when we were taking a unit, that it would suddenly freeze and not move forward? How many of us have had that experience? I see some hands. Yes, most of us have had that experience. The reason why is because when I'm the learner and I open that e-learning unit, it pulls the entire PowerPoint file or the entire PDF file into your company's network, your cyberspace, the bandwidth. Now, 10 and 20 years ago, that was okay because there was not a lot of bandwidth traffic. But nowadays, the procurement department, the safety department, accounting, everyone is using cloud-based software for their tasks. We are backing up and saving our files in the cloud. And all of that means there's a lot more traffic on our company's bandwidth than there used to be. So pulling that whole PowerPoint file into that traffic is like being behind a slow-moving truck at rush hour on a 2-lane highway. Whereas with the HTML format lessons, when I'm the employee and I open that lesson, it gives me one slide at a time. So I open that lesson and this information comes. I read, watch, listen, whatever happens to that one slide, and it goes and the next one comes. And I read, watch, listen, whatever there, and it goes and the next one comes. So the burden on your bandwidth at any given time is a fraction of what it was with that old PDF file or PowerPoint file. So that's the big advantage. And now this is so much more efficient that we can add extras into the lesson that would have been prohibitive with the PowerPoint. For example, audio. I narrate almost every lesson I create, and it's because there's a gain in a person watching what's happening on screen and hearing it at the same time. Cognitively, there's a gain. We can push more information into that person more easily by delivering through these two channels. We can also add a lot of interactive elements, and we can add games, extra resources. We can give the viewer more choices. And all of that is because of this HTML format. And then there's responsive design. That, for those of you who don't know, is when the screen reshapes or reorients the content depending on the screen size and shape. So if I'm taking a lesson on my laptop, the screen is this big and the lesson will be that big. If I'm taking it on my cell phone, it's going to be this big. And the information reorients. I would not say that's super helpful for the average employee at his workstation, But if you have a sales representative or a field technician on the road a lot and they get stuck behind a train, or they're stuck in traffic, or they're stuck waiting on lunch, they've got that dead time. And if they could pull out their tablet and take an e-learning unit, knock that out, that makes it easier for them to make good use of their time.